up, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you, and welcome to Midnight Hatter Live, the weekly variety show where we talk Gundam gaming and gouging plastic. I am, of course, your host, Steven, and joining me, as always, is the battle-damaged Adam Blue. How are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, battle damaged is right. Perfect look when I haven't had a haircut in a while, which I've been meaning to get to because I'm not going to do what I did before and grow it out.
I was thinking about that. It's like, I kind of want to grow it out again. I just happened to have a haircut scheduled last week because,
Yeah,
the hairdresser was like, well, let's just go ahead and schedule one out like every 8 weeks. And I was like, all right,
it's
if
pretty
that's
smart. Good business.
is very wise. She's like, well, I fill up too fast. So like, you can always cancel the appointment later, but then you forget. And so you're
Yeah,
like, well, I can't cancel the day before. So I guess I'm going to go do
that's kind of a good idea though, because it's like, during COVID, I was
it.
cutting my own hair and I thought it was
Same.
fine. I wonder if I should do that again or schedule. Already have it on the book, so I don't have to. I don't know. Hey, by the way, what are you drinking?
Oh, a little Kona Big Wave. Um, yeah, it's a beer lunch.
Oh, so is that a beer?
Yeah, yeah. It was
Oh,
funny because when I was buying them, so their tagline is Liquid Aloha, and the cashier was like, "Oh, Liquid Aloha, that's cool. I want to try that." And I was like, "Well, yeah, that begs the question though, is it Liquid Hello or Liquid Goodbye?"
ah. Yeah, I guess it depends on the person, how they can handle.
Right. Or maybe it's both.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. No, and I'm just, sporting it's a Waterloo pineapple.
Oh,
I have a Kroger walking distance from me, and I
nice.
decided because usually I'll order from Walmart to get delivered, but I was like, "You know what? Let me just go to Kroger. I need my drinks really bad."
Yeah.
And they had this new flavor, I think it's bubbly. It's, lemon sorbet.
Ooh,
That's how it's pronounced, and it tastes like ice cream.
that's awesome.
It's so good, and this is just sparkling water. I wonder if one day they're gonna come out with some study that's like, yeah, all that essence chemicals to make the flavors like cancerous or something
I mean,
because
it's
it's
got
so good.
I always wonder, what does that mean, natural flavors, like, um,
Yeah,
it,
I wanna know how they make that. That would be something I need to investigate.
and I made the joke on Discord the other day, like, because everything's made with essential oils these days. Like, oh, it's got cleansers with essential oils, and I was like, well, whatever happened to the non-essential oils? Did they all get sent home for 2 weeks just to
Yeah.
to flatten the curve?
Oh,
Um,
that's funny. Yeah,
but
that
yeah,
yeah, I
my wife
wonder
didn't
about
laugh at that one.
oh. But could essential oils be used with Gunpla? Is there a reason you would make your Gunpla smell a certain way? You can,
It's true.
like, make it smell like battle damage, burnt something.
That's true. Hey, have you ever heard of Demeter fragrances?
No.
So it's a cologne company. I mean, cologne, perfume, whatever. But the thing is they make fragrances that smell like things, as opposed to like a
That sounds
cologne or
familiar.
something that's like, you have like campfire and it really smells like you've been sitting by a fire all night.
Oh, that's cool.
I remember I got one that was called Firefly because I thought the name was kind of cool. Ooh, Firefly. What's that smell like? It just smells like grass clippings.
Oh, wow.
I
I
was
guess
like,
it's supposed to smell like outside at night or something where you see the fireflies around.
yeah, I guess it's supposed to smell like a summery thing, but it was just grass clippings.
Okay.
But
Okay, that's interesting.
it
Yeah,
I it's a cool idea.
yeah, and it's a cool idea, but I can tell that I sometimes don't jump on it. Like they came out with those new Ninja Turtle controllers that smell like pizza. Have you heard of that?
No, but that's crazy.
Yeah, it has a device on the back that sticks up. It's like a pizza, and it's supposed to smell like pizza. I mean, I don't mind the smell of pizza, but all the time while I'm gaming,
Yeah,
maybe
that
if
would be
I'm
a little
playing Ninja
much.
Turtles, I'm not opposed to smell being a sense added to games if it like brings you in,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those senses that doesn't get engaged very often when it comes to the media we consume.
Yeah.
It's always eyes and ears. That's like it. It would be interesting to see because I know that they're going to remake Willy Wonka again, right? They've already remade it twice now with Timothy
Oh, yeah.
Chalamet. When they remake Willy Wonka, but you can actually lick the TV and the schnozberries will taste like schnozberries, that's going to be the next level.
Yeah, there's gotta be something, I swear, especially with all this neuro stuff, it could be a matter of just kinda like, what, pinching the right nerve to, like, get a certain uh, flavor or smell to trigger in your brain to make it seem as if you did. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, stranger things have happened. I
Yeah.
remember, like, a couple years ago, I saw that helmet that was there were some Japanese scientists that were developing a helmet that would allow you to remote control an arm, and so they had this woman,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
they were testing it out, and she's doing a task with her 2 hands, but then she's also using her mind to control the other arm, and I was like, "Well, there we go. So cyber new types are happening."
Yeah. There we go. Wow. We're almost there.
Yeah.
Almost
But
there.
yeah, hey, I see we've got some of the usual folks in chat: Dan, Zionic Shadow, King Dylan, Johnny Tacoma, Goose. Good to see you guys, and
Yeah.
special shout out
Good
to
to see
King
you all.
Dylan because today's show is inspired by a comment that he made on the Gundam Explained Discord. If you're not over on Gundam Explained Discord, join because we have these kind of conversations, and sometimes it inspires a live stream out of me. But yeah, he brought up the fact that like Adam has a tutorial on Gundam Explained for, doing battle damage on Gunpla, and he was like, "Yeah, and I'm sure Midnight Hatter does too." I don't. I never thought to do it. So, I figured what better way to do it than to do it live, and we'll have some
Yeah.
fun with it.
Yeah. Especially considering if anyone here hasn't yet, there's been a couple few live streams you've done where you kind of started with like the basics of what you can do with a Gunpla without spending a lot of money. I think that sort of is like the starter for this. So,
Yeah, I think it ties
yeah.
in really well.
Yeah.
And so yeah, a couple of disclaimers obviously, this is just how approach these things. I'm going to show off some of my old work too because you'll see kind of the thought progression over time, but you know, everything is about context, right? Like if you're doing scenery for a diorama, obviously like these rules don't apply, go ham, put an M80 in your in your gunpla and
Yeah.
just blow it up. Um but one of the things that I always like to do is I like to go for nuance. I like to go for subtlety. Because you know me,
That's
I
cool.
don't really tend to battle damage. I'll do a little light
Yeah.
weathering, but typically I like my Gundams to look like they're fresh off the production line.
Or they're like
Um,
story driven,
yeah,
like some of yours, like the Eric Blanc,
yeah,
I think.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll get into some of that today too, because I've got
Cool.
a nice story-driven Gunpla that it blows my mind that I've never shown it off on the channel. So this is a
Oh,
world premiere,
nice.
so to speak. But yeah, and again, join the Gundam Explained Discord, and if you haven't checked it out, after the stream, go check out today's Gundam Explained video because
Oh,
you
awesome.
reviewed the Blossom, which
Yeah. Robot
sweet,
Spirit. Yeah, it just
sweet
looks
mobile
good.
suit man.
It just looks cool. Like, I don't know, yeah, how else to explain it. Also, I had a lot of fun doing that video. I feel like I'm getting more into that stride when it comes to the videoing and taking photos of the Gundams and Gunpla and then putting them in the video.
Yeah.
That's kind of fun to do. That's like a fun part of the editing.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, this week's videos have been fantastic. Not to blow smoke at up Adam's butt, but
Oh,
I'm glad that you addressed the drama around the closing of the
oh
Battlelog Kickstarter.
yeah.
Um, you definitely have some good takes, and I think that you have some probably I don't want to say insider knowledge, but you do have unique perspectives from behind the scenes that maybe not a lot of people who maybe run their mouth online. I don't know anybody who
Yeah.
who talks out of their ass that's
No, it's
sitting at
true.
this
I
table.
I know what you mean. It's like once you're around a bit in certain areas, then some things sometimes aren't what they seem. But I want to bring up WebFox, who's been a contributor on both our channels for a while, posted a comment
Hmm.
on my video saying that Legendary has done a Kickstarter before for a King Kong comic.
They did, yeah,
So that's interesting because that's yet another Japanese property that Legendary is trying to really showcase in the West. So yeah.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting because Legendary has a unique track record when it comes to the way that they adapt Japanese properties. You don't see them doing an Enola Holmes comic book. Let's just put it
Oh
that
yeah,
way.
that's right. Yeah, that's
But
right.
uh but yeah, I mean there's a lot of similarities and a lot of what I guess parallels that you can draw between those two franchises, which is very interesting. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, yeah. But thanks for bringing those up. But yeah, to get into our topic, Since you're probably gonna take over with your ingenious design, I just wanted to start to show,
Yeah.
for instance, my 3 phases I've done of, battle damage. The first being this GM. Now, the battle damage is done very light. This is
Yes.
like where, yeah, sometimes the panel lining bleeds over just a little bit, and I'll clean it just enough. I'll get a little bit of, like, silver dry brush on the edges, just a little bit, because
Yeah.
the idea is
Just a
kind of
little
that
paint
story-driven
chip. Yeah.
battle damage. It's like, to think about it, these just came out at the end of the One-Year War, and how much battle did they see? And if they did, they probably got destroyed. So how many are you
Very good point.
seeing them either perfect because they haven't been, sorted yet, or with, like, actually got back, like, perfect, which
Yeah.
I find interesting. Um, and then this one, was I bought this from Target, the American Gundam. This is what was spoken about in the Discord, because this is one I did do a video on,
Yeah.
and it was me actually more of just improvising along the way. And that's kind of a fun thing about it. Again, dry brushing using a drill to kind of put like holes, in it. And even it might be hard to see, but even on the what is that? The left eye, I made it where there's a scar down the left eye. Might be hard to see, but the idea
Very
with
cool.
this was, I got this at Target because it was cheap, and I was like, well, canonically, this Gundam doesn't fit in with anything I have. So I was like, I'll just try out my battle damage.
There you go.
And then the last, and this was actually not done by me, but given to me by Santo Bell, who is a
Oh,
supporter
yeah.
over on Gundam Explained. But this is like when you go all out with the battle damage. This is the
Oh,
mobile
yeah.
suit that is in every battle and happens to win, but
Supreme
comes
weathering.
out looking, and it's a G Savior, which is badass. Um,
Yeah.
I
That
just
is that is a
realized
great
there's
looking G Savior.
cards on the back there. Kind of like what the from G Gundam, whatever they called them. The was it the card? What was
The
that?
Shuffle Alliance.
Yeah, there you go. Shuffle
Yeah.
lines. Anyway, I just quickly wanted to get my stuff out of the way.
Oh, yeah.
Where
Well, so I do want to bring up a kit that you didn't mention is the GM. Was it a GM3 that was melted by the heater?
Oh, that had and that's a good point because I still have it for the purpose of reusing it. Yeah. So what Steven's talking about is I had a GM3 that I put a a gloss top coat on it, but it like pooled in certain areas. I'm like, okay, either I did something wrong or it was the temperature or the humidity, because normally I can get those fine. So I put it in front of a heater to kind of melt the gloss to kind of set it. And then I was in a work meeting and totally forgot and melted the yeah, I'm glad you remember that, because
Oh, yeah.
I would love to. Yeah, what if I made like a light diorama where it was a giant pink tube, and that's
There you
like
go.
the beam from a mega beam cannon, and then
Yeah,
I
it's
just
like the
have the
solar
GM
ray.
just kind of like floating nearby, and like kind of adding burnt parts on the melted parts.
Oh, that's perfect. Yeah.
That's cool. You remember that? I have that in a box. It's like I'll get to that later.
I know. That's, as bad as my backlog is, my backlog of kits that I'm working on is just as bad. I've got just Tupperwares everywhere that have,
Oh
random
yeah.
assorted parts and such.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. Is there a name for that? There's your backlog of kits, but then there's your backlog of in progress.
I don't know. It makes me want to design like a 3D Kanban board for those of you that are familiar with like project management. Is like if I had columns of shelves where I could have all of the kits that I haven't built, and then I've got Tupperwares of all of the kits that are in progress, maybe Tupperwares of all the kits that need to be top coated, and then I could just pull them out like drawers and be like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
maybe it's a
that
way of me for me to organize my thoughts.
no, that's a good point. I feel like that's a whole other aspect of Gunpla building that we don't really talk about a lot. There's the backlog, and then there's like the in progress backlog where you have just some parts laying around with tape already on them because you're just waiting to paint.
Yeah, that's such a. I mean, like I've got clamps over here, like alligator clips of Zeta parts that need to be taken outside and spray painted, but
Uh,
there's always
well,
an excuse, right?
yeah. No. definitely.
But one thing that you can always do, because this can be done inside, you don't need to spray paint anything, is you can battle damage your kits. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go ahead and switch into our view here. And one of the first things that I always recommend doing, and this is a step that, like, so you alluded to just kind of freeforming on the USA Gundam, right?
Right. I didn't have a plan, so I wanted to test out various methods. Yeah.
Excellent. So one of the things that I like to do, and I've got my I feel like a newscaster with my sheet here. Um I printed out some reference photos.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I did this, and I recommend that people do this because it's going to make your battle damage more realistic, and you can be inspired to do certain damage types based on the types of damage that you would see in real combat. So, like, for instance, and this is one of the reasons that I say, like, kind of subtlety is everything, is we look at this tank that, and I went with tanks because obviously I think that that's a very close analogy to what you would expect mobile suits to be. Some people like to compare them to aircraft, fighter jets and the like, but typically you're not going to see a battle damaged jet. Like,
Yeah.
it, if a
That's a
jet
very good
sustains
point.
damage, it's gone. And so again, like I said, context matters, right? Like, if you're
Yeah.
going for a totaled mobile suit, then go wild with it, like blow it up. But if you're going for just like subtle battle damage, look at the way that this tank looks. Is there scorch marks? There's some armored plates that are kind of knocked askew, that sort of thing. But you don't see like big gashes, and you don't see, deep bullet holes. This is
Yeah.
armor plating that's been designed to withhold or withstand, a heavy battering of fire. So, this would be like the extent of what I would normally do. But I did want to draw attention to a couple of these other images that I found. What I really like about this one, so this is an example of where you do see a gash taken out of the metal, right? But then look at what happened to the armor plate. Is it split, almost mirroring the seam of the.
Mm.
So it didn't split on the seam, but it split in the same formation of the seam. And the reason I bring that up is because I think it would be kind of cool. So, like, let's say, for instance, we have this little Zaku shoulder. I think it would be kind of cool if you did put like a gash from a beam saber here, if then you split along the seam of the shoulder and create that crack.
Yeah. Because,
So,
yeah, I guess all that stress pretty much just went throughout that panel.
exactly.
Yeah. No,
So,
that's
and
cool.
I think that that's probably associated with some concussive force.
Yeah.
Um, and then this image, the reason I like this one is because, typically what you'll see people do is, you'll bore a hole straight through a a plate of armor and make that a bullet hole, right? But technically, you really wouldn't see many bullet holes unless it's like a really high caliber, like if you're looking at like a sniper rifle from a mobile suit. But like your little 120 millimeter machine guns, you're probably going to be looking at something like this, where you have clearly like this was a spray of fire, but
Mm.
none of the rounds really penetrated the armor. They just put dents in it and kind of scored around the metal. So that's one of the things that I've taken home is, like, instead of doing what I used to do, which, as you can see with this shield, I mean, I think you can even see my hand through the hole that I
Oh, I
put.
see. Yeah.
Um, you know, the second hole is actually more realistic because it's just a dent that was put in the shield. Now, I'm not
And
saying you can't put holes in things. I've done it in the past, but you have to consider that, like, your Gunpla are hollow, but you know a real
yeah,
mobile
because if
suit
it
is
was
going to
gonna
have
be
interior
through
components.
a part where there's things on the other side, you could add, like, I don't know, innards. But
Oh
on
yeah.
that shield, did you paint it green with silver underneath, uh, or did you put silver on top of what you had cut, even painting
I
it?
put silver on top, but I have seen
That's
people
cool.
do the, like, silver undercoat and then scratch off,
Yeah,
which can be
yeah,
more realistic because then you kind of get the paint flecks, which is cool.
yeah.
But yeah, I have cut holes into kit parts in the past. So, like, for instance, this Zaku, I've repaired the hole with putty since then. But what I did here was I actually carved out a chunk that had been blown apart, and then on the inside I had put a little bit of sculpey, and I had taken parts from a circuit board and put them in there to be like the innards of the mobile suit that were exposed.
Oh,
But
that's cool.
the reason I don't like that now, and the reason that I patched it up, is because what I would do now is I would probably put like an inner frame. So I would probably take like
Mm.
a piece of pla plate and cut it into like a strip and put it on the inside, and then you would have like that inner frame. You can
Yeah,
always use
maybe even put a
reference photos.
line,
What's that?
down the center and then put silver on it just to make it look like it's yeah, and then that's a good idea.
Yeah. And then of course, we have our totaled tank image, which, again, if you're going for just a totally wrecked mobile suit, then that's the way to go. But then, when it comes to again,
Mm,
you're not going to see a lot of that like, slash type thing. You're going to see a lot of bent metal, but not necessarily
yeah.
destroyed metal, I guess, if that makes sense.
No, that's a good call. It's almost like earlier with the armor plate kind of breaking at, the seam line. That's sort of the same thing here where it's still intact. The armor's still intact. There's enough force to, like, bend it.
Yeah, like you can
That's a
see where it
yeah,
used to be
yeah.
almost. Like you can imagine where that damage came from. And that's where having a lighter is always a lighter or a heat gun
Oh, okay.
to melt your plastic a little bit. So what we're going to be messing with today is I actually have this is an older Zaku that obviously, this is
Test
one of my
dummy.
earliest customs that I have since, kind of tweaked with, repaired it a little bit. I use it as like a testing kit for, when I want to test out a new paint or something like that. But, I have to draw attention to the fact that like these older kits, look at the level of detail, you know, the newer high grades don't have like a cockpit and
Oh,
innards that would be exposed. So
good call.
that's pretty cool. And
That
like
makes you a good candidate for that then.
yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
that's what I was thinking is like, what if we cut out a chunk of this plate and expose that inner reactor, I guess, whatever it is that sits next to the cockpit in the Zaku. So that'd be
No, that's
cool.
a good idea.
Um, and then we've got a shield. Like shield is always a good candidate for putting damage on, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I think that we can dive into this and have some fun. I do want to show off before we get started though this kit that we might start cutting into. This is my grappler Zaku, which I don't know why I've never shown this off before. I was doing a build challenge with my buddy Tony, and we both took high grade Zegox and we kind of created a story around them. And so this was designed as, a custom mobile suit for a Xeon Ace pilot that didn't like to use, the iron nails associated with like the typical amphibious mobile suits. So
Yeah.
these are actually master grade sized hands that I put, and then I also used resin and silicone to make copies of the individual links of the arms so that I could extend the arms and make them
Wow.
a little bit more grabby. So
How many did you put on each one?
I added two extra rungs on each arm.
Wow. That is really
Pretty
cool.
cool. And then I also used a trick that there's a YouTuber by the name of Action Playtop who does, really good Gunpla customizations. Well, what I did was this mono eye is actually a magnet, and there's a magnet behind the plate that you can
Wow.
actually move the mono eye around. So
Amazing.
if I can get it out from behind the yeah, I need to cut into that plastic a little more to make it move a
So
little
easy to
bit.
move it, but still, that is an excellent I'm guessing you use that, glowing paint?
Oh yeah, yeah, have to do
Yeah,
that.
it's pretty bright. That's awesome, dude. This is a sick custom.
Yeah.
Oh, even on the top?
Oh yeah, yeah. I figured I'd
Wow.
put some lights on the missiles up top.
You should do a video on this and
Just
all the
this.
steps you because that is neat and it looks great.
Hey, thank you. Yeah, that's I have all this old footage from that kit, so
Oh, cool.
maybe I'll have to actually edit that together and make something of it.
I think so.
Um, so one of the things that you mentioned, and I think that this is a step that I would use as well, is probably using a drill bit to put in um, some of those machine gun fire holes, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and again, it's you can go pretty random with it. Like obviously, I like to do a tight grouping of them because then it kind of feels like it was a little
Yeah.
rapid fire, little spray.
That or like at like a line, like a trail in a way.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Um, one of these days, I'm gonna have to actually get a pin vise to do this with.
Oh, yeah.
I would just put it in my power drill and you know do that, but then I'm afraid that I would just bore right through and put a hole in it.
Yeah, I think I showed you that, like, tiny drill I have that has all the little bits. That's I
Oh,
was using
that's
for, like,
sweet.
the beam sabers of the older GMs that didn't have the hole in there. I would just drill the hole and
Hey,
yeah,
that's brilliant.
it's pretty helpful. Yeah. What else was I using that for? Yeah, I did some of the battle damage. I think I mainly got it for battle damage. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's one of the oldest tricks in the book, right? Is
Yeah.
putting a couple of uh bullet holes in things. But yeah, I mean it really does depend on the thickness of the armor um that you're trying to represent those bullet holes on,
Yeah.
whether it would be just kind of like a ding or whether it would actually penetrate.
Yeah. That's a good point because yeah, you could in both cases easily kind of reflect how that would look if it's just like a little ding with a little bit of maybe silver to show some metal coming through the paint and then maybe some black or brown for like the scorching or whatever from that.
Yeah,
And then
exactly.
when you drill in there, you could have kind of that extra plastic that sort of forms around the rim, depending how deep you go to make it look
Yeah.
more like it's penetrated. And then I guess you could even add putty on top too if you wanted to like make it look super deformed in some way.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of what they do with like what is that? I know that they use spirit gum to put it on, but like the silicone prosthetics that they put on actors that have been injured and stuff, they kind of like s- that they like add on like flesh that's
Yeah,
been kind of hewn away.
yeah.
Um the other thing you got to think about is like the difference between say a beam rifle round shot, which
Oh,
obviously would have much more scorch to it than just a round from a machine gun. Um, and then of course like if the bullet like smashed on impact and kind of like deflected,
mm,
it wouldn't be a perfectly round bullet hole. Then it would be kind of like kind of like what
like
those
yeah,
what that
a
reference
little
photo looks
oval.
like, where it's like you've got
Yeah,
that kind of cutaway almost on
yeah,
each one of those. So the only ones that look like they kind of hit true are the ones up here. Everything here looks like it kind of deflected upwards,
yeah,
which is kind of another cool thing. Like, like we were saying, it's all about story, right? So, you're kind of trying to tell a story with your battle damage where, um, if, so the way I'm kind of envisioning it, right, would be like if this Zaku was walking this way and like came out from behind a building and then started taking fire from some Federation tanks or something like that. So the first shot hits very cleanly on the shield. But then as it turns, the following shots are going to kind of sprinkle up this way because
oh,
obviously that would be the pilot, turning to face where he was taking fire from.
yeah,
So that's where I'm going to try and, each of those successive, is
Yeah,
that a
I think
word?
so.
Successive?
Successive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Each successive shot is going to make less clean contact and then move up the shield to where it will start making contact with the body.
Now, what gun is shooting it? Hmm.
That's the good question. Um, well, have
Is
a
it gonna be a GM that's shooting it? And it could be different options?
that's a good idea. And then I guess I would have to battle damage the GM to
Ah,
match it.
and that's another thing too, because, like, a beam saber versus a heat hawk hitting, the metal, that's different that could potentially be different looking battle damage.
Yeah, yeah. I think in chat Dylan mentioned a plasma cutter or a acetylene torch. That would obviously be different than, say, anything that, the Heat Hawk actually does have metal in it. So
Yeah,
you would have almost like a combination of bludgeoning and burns.
melting, yeah, exactly.
So with this last one, just going to kind of nick off of the side of the shield here. And maybe I should probably. I love having this boom arm on my camera now.
Yeah, that is
It
pretty
makes
neat.
it so much easier than trying to be like, okay, can I just focus? Um, So yeah, like I said, that initial shot makes the cleanest contact, and then we've got some successive shots, and then we want to kind of nick the side of the shield where that last round doesn't make very clean contact. And I like to use these kind of pointed files for this too, because you obviously I could be getting in here with a hobby knife, but I think that would look a little too clean.
Oh, yeah, and
Um,
dangerous. I'm scared of hobby knives.
yeah, that's that's a good point.
That's a multi-use tool then. Yeah, that's a good idea. I think I have a couple of those.
Yeah, these guys are pretty handy. And it's a very high grit to it as well. So, um, now as for if I've got my handy, now I would probably want to paint this shield. Normally I would, obviously it would be painted ahead of time,
Wow.
but obviously the classic silver Sharpie.
Ah, and that's a silver Sharpie, not a Gundam marker,
Yeah,
just
not
classic
there we go.
silver Sharpie. That's cool.
Yeah, the metallic Sharpies I am a huge fan of for this purpose. And the nice thing about them is that like if you were going to do, that kind of like
Yeah.
that skinning along the side of a shield to get that same effect, you could do that.
Okay. That's actually good to know because those Gundam markers, they can go fast and they're kind of pricey. But if I can go to Walmart and just get some Sharpies.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, as long as you're not looking for that fine tip, because obviously, fine tip
Oh,
Sharpies are not
yeah.
in they're not very common, right?
Yeah.
Now that said, I'm going to grab a Gundam instead of my usual. This one might work. So this is a just a multi-liner artist's pen.
Oh,
Just gonna
like for inking?
Yeah, it would be for like inking drawings.
Okay.
So it's got really good ink quality. I use it for panel lining sometimes. Again, cheaper. Well, you'd have to price them out because, like, obviously a Copic multi-liner is going to be much more expensive than a Gundam marker. But I'm pretty sure that these Zig brand pens are cheaper than the Gundam marker
Yeah.
panel lining pens. And so what I do with that is just kind of go along the outside to represent where that heat kind of scorched.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, that you could do is, use a bit of like one of those like Tamiya weathering kits and just use one of the darker colors.
Mm.
I wouldn't want to use this one in particular, but I guess I don't have my pastels. You can also use pastels for that. So, a lot of people, again, official Gundam tools can be pricey and stuff like that. But if you were to just buy some of these little makeup brushes that come with the Tamiya weathering kit,
Oh,
and you use those on some pastel crayons, not only do you have a wider range of colors to choose from, because like a set of pastels is what, like $20, and
yeah,
you'll get like 30 colors, versus this is what, I don't know
yeah.
how much these are now. I think it's like $5 for just this, right?
No, but that's a good call.
Yeah. So I mean, anything
Yeah.
that's got that kind of oily, chalky feel to it, you'll get that same sort of effect. So that is another little hobby tip of the day. Um, but we can also use the official stuff. We use like some of these real touch markers. Um, you know, just putting a couple of dabs of ink there, and then what I would do then is bust out the blender, which is like the clear
Oh.
guy, and you can use that to kind of like,
I'll move up a little bit, just a
oh
little bit.
yeah,
Yeah.
good call. So
Nice.
you can use the blender to kind of smear that.
Ah, that wait, so then what is that marker?
So this is the Gundam Real Touch marker. So you guys are probably familiar with like the traditional Gundam marker. These guys that these are like paint pens, right?
Yeah.
So these Real Touch markers, instead of being paint, they're kind of like an alcohol-based ink, I want to say.
Mhm.
Um, let's see if I've got a
Was it
good.
for, like, smearing and stuff?
Yeah, so like the ink doesn't dry right away, and it's not like paint where it's super thick. So like for instance, if we had we've got like this little area here, you can get really messy with it and just like
Yeah.
smear this on, and then you come back with the blender and kind of like pull the color away from the spot. So it's really good for like rust or anything that's like drippy.
Oh, can you move it up again just a bit?
Oh yeah.
Ah, yeah.
So if you wanted to like kind of represent, grease and grime, this is a great option for that.
Now
I
does the dark ink stay on that pen until, like, you've used it all up, if you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, well like you mean like the
Yeah.
blender? It does stain the blender, so like it's always going to have this black tip.
Ah, okay.
But I mean it'll come off. It doesn't like.
'Cause that's handy. That's
Oh
just
yeah.
like painting or coloring, you know? It's
Yeah, it kind of gives you I would say like a more temporary palette, instead of having to know exactly where you want to put your ink. You can kind of smear it in all directions and like, keep moving the ink around until you're happy with it.
yeah,
Um
that looks great. And it seemed to also kind of brown it, if that's a good term to use. I guess because it's like the lighter it's more of the fluid than the ink.
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It kind of it takes pigment away from it, I guess,
Yeah.
is the way to phrase that. So yeah, I mean this stuff is like I cannot recommend the Real Touch markers enough. Like I said, if I knew of a good, inexpensive alternative to those, then I would absolutely love to. Yeah, drop in chat if you know.
A
Johnny
smear
took a
with a finger or Q-tip. Yeah, that's a
yeah.
way for sure.
And I mean you could do that with like the pastels and stuff too, which is cool. Like, yeah, I love doing things that are kind of non-destructive. So like, if you top coat and then you start weathering and then it's like, oh, I don't really like how I did this, or like washes are great because then you can just like put black ink all over and then pull it back with a Q-tip and
Yeah, I
yeah.
like that. That is actually a very satisfying part of panel lining when I use the ink dropper, or whatever, the Tamiya ink, and I just put it
Yeah.
on, and then I go back with a Q-tip and alcohol and
That
or
that
water
is
fluid.
definitely the way to go for sure.
Yeah, it's a nice little activity that feels that I get yeah, I focus, and it's almost like cleaning.
Yeah. Yeah, it's got a cathartic feeling to it,
Yeah.
relaxing. So yeah, like I said, we are going to try and create that broken away plate, which again to kind of reiterate our story here. If this Zaku was coming from behind a building, got peppered with, honestly, the size of those bullet holes seem to indicate more of like a Vulcan than.
Hmm. Okay.
So I'm thinking maybe the GM was crouched, fires the Vulcan to get the Zaku to turn,
Yeah.
and then is wielding the beam saber in the right hand and brings it down over the top.
Oh, that's very smart tactic that a GM would want to use to expose the cockpit area.
Yeah. See, there we go. If only that worked in GBO too.
Yeah. No.
um so now that said, if the beam saber was going to come down right-handed. Oh, here, let me pull this back so we can get a full picture of this of this imaginary scenario. So Zaku turns, beam saber comes down. I think that we're going to try and cut like right along here. And I
Cool.
think that with the head turned, it's not going to make any contact with the head. We might scorch it a little bit, but I think what we can do is, and I love doing this with Zaku's, Goofs, any of the Xeon mobile suits that have piping, is breaking the piping apart
Oh,
and
yeah.
yeah, doing that. Now, one of the things that I probably should have done on stream as well. I'm mad that I don't have the supplies for it in hand, but I think someone mentioned creating like an arm that has like wires spraying out of it and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
always very cool. So do you remember like the mobile suit in action figures?
Oh, I've seen those.
Like the
Yeah.
battle damaged ones? They would come with like swappable limbs for, when you would have battle
Oh,
damage on a mobile
yeah, the
suit.
Robot Spirits Easy 8 has that for the arm. It
See, that's
either comes
perfect.
with the goof or it's the option parts, but yeah.
Yeah, see, I love that kind of stuff when you have like the option parts that you can swap on and off. And the way that I usually do that is, I would just take a polycap and glue all of the battle
Oh,
damage parts to the polycap, and then like, when you remove the arm, you can put on the battle damaged one instead. So like this
yeah,
would be the
that's a great
default
idea.
arm, and then if we just took a polycap, just a spare one that fit,
Yeah,
um I'm
that's a great idea.
yeah, I actually I have one of those for my Easy 8 because I wanted to recreate the
Oh,
that final
yeah.
scene. So, I think that this is going to be done slightly at an angle because I don't think it's going to hit straight down. If the Zaku was turning, we're going to kind of get like a almost like this. And this is just one of those little Hasegawa hobby saws. Probably
Yeah.
use one that's not curved. Now, if you think hobby knives are dangerous,
Oh, those worse?
yeah, the number of times I've cut myself with one of these guys and like you know, you can see how
Yikes.
fine those teeth are.
Yeah. You know what? I actually got a bunch. I think you have a previous video or live stream where you talked about etching or something, I
Yeah.
wanna say, and you suggested some stuff. Yeah, and I bought some of that from the links. Yeah.
Yeah, these things are awesome. I can't recommend them enough. Pretty inexpensive on Amazon, I think.
Yeah.
Again, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I wish I knew of like a cheaper alternative, like an off-brand or something like that. Because you
Oh,
know me, I'm the guy that likes to try and save you your money on your hobby tools so that you can spend
ah,
more Gunpla.
and I appreciate it. Yeah, because I'm the same way. Yeah, spend more on Gunpla, spend less on tools. That's a good
Exactly.
way to go about it.
So my plan is to put this cut in here with the hobby saw, but then we are going to go back over it with the lighter and use.
Mm,
I've got some needle nose pliers here that we can use to kind of bend the plastic back.
wow.
Um, so if I burn my house down, just remember it's Dylan's fault.
That's funny.
um, so we have made clearance through the part. That's already kind of warping the way that I want it to without even
Wow.
having to really do much.
Wow, that already looks pretty cool, actually.
Yeah, I like to imagine, and this is one of those things like, when you look at some of those reference photos, the and you mentioned this earlier where it's like the damage doesn't go inward. It kind of almost explodes outward, which is an
Yeah.
interesting phenomena. I don't know what would cause that, but again, if you're trying to go for realism in your Gunpla battle damage, that's the way to go.
Yeah, it's the materials working together. Like, what is the end result of these materials, whether that's armor, a beam, or whatever?
Yeah, exactly. I think we've got enough of a played out piece here. I can get it even more bent outwards, but we'll see. Obviously, I should be doing this with a respirator. Right.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know we're laughing, but I've learned how, like, almost any activity that involves combustion or breaking down of materials, they say wear a respirator.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
most of the time, even growing up, you don't see that unless it's like for big high grade things, like, someone spray painting a car,
Yeah,
you know, they're usually wearing a respirator.
yeah. And fortunately, I've got pretty good ventilation since I'm, right by the door here. So
Oh, that's good.
now the question is this going to fit?
Mm,
We want it damaged, but we still want it to, fit in where it's supposed to go.
it seems like it.
Looks pretty good. I wish that
Yeah.
I should have moved it a little further so that you can still see
Oh,
the Zaku innards, but you know, we'll do what we can.
no, it still looks great.
Yeah, maybe we can cut away a little bit more, which I think, this is one of those things where I love the shape of this file too, because obviously we can recreate the sort of since the beam saber blade gets thicker on the way down and the file has a similar shape profile. Basically, keep if I keep it in line,
Yeah.
as long as I don't turn it this way, then we're kind of recreating that same beam saber shape,
Oh, yeah.
if that makes sense.
Oh, sure. Lad just joined.
Hey, what's going on, shirt lad?
Say hi from the editing chair, so I guess he's working on video. That's cool.
That man never stops editing. That's
I know.
but yeah, if I had my soldering iron handy, that I would probably use that instead to get these effects.
Oh, really?
Oh
I
yeah.
don't have much experience with a soldering iron, so.
Yeah, soldering iron is great. Um Not just for electronics, but for scorching plastic and wood.
Oh, maybe I do have something. I remember one year for my wife, it was like a wooden like anniversary card, and then I had this tool we have that heats up that I was able to like draw right
Ah,
into it. So maybe I do have something. I'll have to look for that.
well, I think that this is coming along pretty nicely.
Oh yeah. No, that looks great.
Again, I think that there wouldn't be too much damage to the head, but it looks like we probably need to put something in on the torso up there. Where did I? Oh, there we go. Get it actually in frame here.
Thank you.
Pilot hole. We can continue in that same. Must have put a lot of layers of paint on this if you still not see the if you still can't see the original color. And same thing, except I think probably just dangerous uses of hobby knives.
Oh wow.
Do a little hot knife to kind of melt away some of this plastic here. This is what I used to do when customizing miniatures was, you know,
Heating up a hobby knife.
yeah, heat up a hobby knife and then use
Huh.
that instead of directly heating up the plastic. And I guess it works the same way as a soldering iron, honestly.
And would that just be for weathering, or was there other stuff you would do with
Um,
miniatures that are different?
it depends. Sometimes I could do some sculpting with it. I wonder if I still have.
Oh.
Don't have one, but I used to customize hero clicks.
Oh yeah. Oh
And
wow,
so
that's
one of
cool.
the things that was really cool is I took a Spider-Man because at the time they didn't have a Carnage figure, but I really wanted to play as Carnage. So I took a Spider-Man and used the heat from, from a lighter and from like different sources to basically stretch out his limbs and make him look like lankier and a little messier.
Wow. Did that work?
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying looking.
Oh wow. That is cool.
So, yeah. I encourage people to get creative with their toys.
Yeah.
See how this looks with our armor plate back in place.
Oh yeah, that's looking cool.
Yeah, that's definitely the look we're going for. I know I mentioned I was going to keep this subtle, but apparently I decided to just blow a hole in the chest of this.
Well, no, but I mean, luckily you made it look pretty easy in
Yeah, I
general.
mean,
Yeah.
it's and like we said, it's about kind of telling a story with the damage that you're creating.
Yeah.
So I think that it really sells that idea of of what happened to it.
Yeah.
Get some of that plastic out of the way. Um, Same deal. Again, I would probably actually paint this instead of doing what I'm doing here. But this, I think you would probably have less silver and more black on account of the fact that it's really,
Oh yeah, burnt.
yeah, it would be really scorched.
How much would there be some of that like bright liquid metal? I think that
Mm,
would be neat to be able to reproduce somehow, especially if you can make it look like, oh, there you go.
little neon black light.
Yeah.
That would be the way to go, I think. So
Especially if
like,
you can make it look like blood splatter, but it's really the melted metal.
yeah, that like molten.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't last very long, but I think that what's cool about this is we could do sort of that like object source lighting where because it's still hot, it kind of is gonna
Oh,
glow
yeah.
on
That's
itself.
right. Yeah, that is a neat idea.
Let's see here. Do I have
I
black
noticed that
paint?
done a lot with miniatures and, like, swords and stuff.
Yes, that is a
Yeah.
very popular technique in the Warhammer space, as I understand it. Now, again, because I don't have as much time to paint these days, I tend to just opt for LEDs to create that effect.
Although, actually, that's just as cool.
Yeah,
Well,
well,
especially with having this cockpit, you can almost set an LED in there.
that's kind of what I was thinking is it would be really cool to bury an LED in there so that like because
Yeah.
technically you would have like the light from from the cockpit from the monitors and everything kind of still illuminating
Oh,
the
that's yeah,
inside.
there's that, yeah.
So that said, I think if we come in here with our finer tip Sharpie and create some of the Now, this is an important thing to note if you do choose to use Sharpies, as I do, is that over time, the ink from Sharpies, especially black Sharpies, is going to turn reddish. So it's going to get a little browner over time. To me, I think that lends itself really well to weathering and to battle
Yeah.
damage because it's going to, it resembles not just jet black. Like you get a little bit more of a tonality there. But
And I think and I wonder if it's the same chemical process, but yeah, over time, those colors, that impact that oxidation would have on the metal would make it a little more brown and reddish anyway. So yeah, just like those pictures you were showing.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's man, I didn't even think about that, honestly. I wonder how much of that, and again, it's about context, right? So like, are you battle damaging a kit that is like freshly battle damaged, or are you creating a diorama of like, this is it's 0096 and you're creating a scene from the 1 Year War. And so that Zaku or that GM has been sitting and collecting rust, and maybe you
Yeah.
can do some overgrowth, like get some fake plants or something and put some
Yeah.
vines on it if it's kind of been buried.
And I think that's what it was something was it in, 08 MS Team where there's, like, a visual of a mobile suit with the growth on it?
I
And
want to
I'm all
say,
like, "These haven't been out long enough, to do that." You know what I mean? In universe, the mobile suits wouldn't have been around long enough to have kinda the growth on them.
that's a good point.
Yeah, but I figure it's just cool visual to
Yeah.
have, showing a weathered old mobile suit with this but yeah, they'll show that, and I remember when I first saw it, I was like, "Well, haven't weren't these just put in?" But I think I wanna say it might have been an end or beginning title or something, and, it wasn't really part of the story, you know, just a visual.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, it could have been part of like the whole Miller's report thing at the end because there was that wrecked Xeon ship with all the kids on board and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's
So
interesting.
yeah, so I know we've gotta go here in just a moment, but I figure we can. Oh man, you know what? I might not be able to do this anyway because it looks like my paint has finally dried up on me.
Oh. Oh, is that your, uh a glowy paint and it all dried up?
Yeah, I don't know if I maybe didn't close it properly. Thought it was closed, but
Hmm.
I don't. I wouldn't want to use a color other than orange, though, to be honest with you, because like I think pink obviously is a little too beam sabery,
Oh, yeah.
and then the yellow is a little too hot yellow. That one's definitely not closed properly.
Or what about, well, you probably don't have it, but like an orange with the white in the middle.
Yeah, that might work because then I can kind of create that gradient.
Yeah.
Um, I did have kind of another color that was good for it, but I guess we'll have to pass on that for now. I can always add some. I have some mineral spirits in the garage I can use to
Oh,
thin that out and reinvigorate it. But I think for the time being, this is going to do enough to really sell what we're going for.
yeah. That is
Like,
pretty
like I
cool.
said, peppered with shots from a Vulcan and then beam saber down the chest. Um, I think Talos brought up the the best point is yes, the pilot would definitely be illuminated by way of beam saber.
Well, very
Well,
cool.
yeah, hopefully, I'm glad that we, got to do a little bit of that. I know that we talked a little bit beforehand and took up a lot of time, but maybe it makes me want to do like a full edited video on battle damage and things like that. Like I said, the key
Yeah.
takeaway points for me are just use reference photos. Like, you know,
Yeah.
artists have been using reference photos for centuries. Like, are you better than Michelangelo?
Yeah. No, but
uh,
that's a good idea. Yeah, using reference photos helps, especially if it's not something directly related, but just what portrays that sense of whatever you're trying to get
yeah.
out of it. Yeah.
Exactly. So, and watch ballistics test videos. That's always just fun to watch,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
super slow mo guys do,
Yeah.
shooting a ballistics dummy. But
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for joining me today as we burn Gunpla, and I think I'm starting to feel a tingle in my head. I'm feeling
Oh.
pretty good. I'm being melting plastic. But
That's
yeah,
cool.
and thank you, Adam, for bringing your expertise to it.
Oh,
Those
sure.
USA Gundams are practically begging to be battle damaged at the price that they are
I know.
sold.
I know, and they're just sitting there at Target too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So go out to Target, get yourself a lighter, and burn down a Gundam.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much for hanging out in chat and for your recommendations and tips in there as well. Hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Go check out Adam's review of the Blossom if you
Oh,
haven't already, and we will
thank
see
you.
you tomorrow for the Gundam Explained show.
That's right. See you all.
Cheers.